Hey everybody, Mrs. Combs here. We are going to further talk about the nephron and further break it down so that it's a bit more understandable for us. Okay, so as you can recall from previous lecture, the nephron is considered the functional unit of our kidney. Functional unit because it is what performs the main functions that our kidneys are known for. Okay, helps to filter our blood, helps to create urine so that it can be excreted by our urinary system. So these nephrons are pretty important. If you can also recall, in a kidney, which is the size of an adult fist, okay, within that kidney itself, there lies over 1 million of these nephrons. So they are extremely small, okay, and they lie within that kidney. Further things to remember is that the nephrons themselves lie within the cortex layer of the kidney and extend deeper to the medulla portion of the kidney. Okay? So we're going to talk about the nephron in the order that things occur, okay, because that just makes the most sense. So renal artery, that's what travels into the kidney to bring blood, oxygenated blood, to the kidney. But this blood needs to be filtered out, and that's what happens when it passes into the nephron. So the artery breaks off into smaller arterioles, and that's what comes off and kind of loops all around here in this squiggly area called the glomerulus. Okay? So that arteriole loops in, branches all around here, and comes out on the other side. Okay, so this is all one long unit there. Okay, now within this twisted part, this glomerulus, that is where filtration occurs. It's the separation of parts out of our blood. So what makes it through to the other side? The larger structures like our blood cells, red and white blood cells, proteins, okay? These things are larger. They can't pass through the openings that are within the walls of the arterioles here. So they pass through to the other side, and then everything else comes out here and is separated into what we call filtrate, okay? Now, what is filtrate? Filtrate can be made up of ions, amino acids, glucose, water, urea, which is waste. So that gets passed out of the glomerulus. Now, surrounding that glomerulus is this little capsule right here called the Bowman's capsule. So all of this filtrate that gets pulled out or filtered out of the blood by the glomerulus gets taken up by the Bowman's capsule and then passed on to the tubules. So this filtrate then travels the length of the tubules within the nephron. And of course, there's certain areas of the tubule, and they're all named different things. So the first twisted part of this tubule is referred to as the PCT, or the proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal is just talking about its location in relation to the Bowman's capsule. So it's closer to the Bowman's capsule, right? So it's proximal, and convoluted just means that it has that it's twisting all around. Okay, so this is the PCT, the proximal convoluted tubule of the nephron. The filtrate then passes down through this loop of Henle. Okay, if we wanted to get a little bit more in depth, this part that comes down is called the descending loop of Henle, and this part that comes up is the ascending loop of Henle. And finally, that filtrate passes through the DCT, or the distal convoluted tubule. distal because remember, it's a bit further away from that Bowman's capsule than this first part of the tubule. So filtrate gets taken up by the Bowman's capsule. It passes all through these tubules, and by the time it reaches this collecting duct, it's urine, okay? And that's what gets passed to the renal pelvis, gets funneled to the ureters, goes to the bladder, exits via the urethra, okay? So how did it turn from filtrate to urine? What goes on that makes that happen? So you will see that I've drawn a bunch of little capillaries that surround this nephron, okay, that surrounds the tubules. So the entire time that this filtrate is passing through the tubules, okay, there's something called reabsorption that's going on, and also secretion. But first we're going to talk about reabsorption. And what that is all of this filtrate was separated from the blood based upon size alone, okay? So as the filtrate is passing through, the blood supply realizes, oh, hey, there's more that we need back. There's some stuff that we passed into the filtrate that we actually need. So then all along the length of these tubules, stuff is being released from the tubule back into this interstitial space. And when I say stuff, what are we talking about, right? We're talking about salt. We're talking about glucose. We're talking about water, okay? All of those things, the blood supply is realizing, ooh, hey, we put that in the filtrate, but we actually need it back. So it is exiting the tubules and being reabsorbed by the capillaries, okay? So it's important to note that reabsorption, or things exiting the tubules and being taken up by the capillaries, occurs through the entire length of the tubule, okay? Through the entire length. If we wanted to get specific, this descending loop of Henle only releases water, or only reabsorbs water. And this ascending portion only reabsorbs like sodium and chloride. But you don't really need to know that. I just really need you to know that the entire length of these tubules, reabsorption, or stuff getting pulled out of the tubule and reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, is occurring, okay? Also, along the length of this tubule and through the collecting duct, secretion is happening as well. And that is things from the blood supply that the body's like, we have a little bit too much of this, so let's get rid of it by way of urine. So it's actually being passed from the blood supply back into the tubules, okay? And that could be things like water, nutrients, urea. So again, it's just when our blood supply has an excess of these things, it releases it so that it becomes urine. That's why if you've drank a lot of water in a day and you have to go to the bathroom a lot more and your urine is more clear, it is because your blood supply is secreting more of this water because it has too much into the urine, and the urine's becoming more concentrated with that water. I hope it makes sense. Feel free to watch it again to get more of an idea of what's happening in the nephron itself. Main takeaway points is that the blood right here is separating in a process called filtration. This filtrate is being passed through the tubules. Throughout these tubules, reabsorption is occurring, and that's taking water, nutrients from the tubules and bringing it back to the blood supply. And then there's also some secretion happening where the blood supply is getting rid of more things that are being taken up by the tubules and then emptying through the collecting duct by becoming part of the urine. And that's all.